Today we're delving into something that's really hard to talk about: quitting. Giving up is a little known secret to becoming a better runner. It's not only about knowing when to quit, but importantly, what to quit. In this video, we'll teach you to know when to quit a session that's doing more harm than good. We'll then explore 2 strategies that will protect your well-being and your long-term progress, and the one reason why smart runners understand this superpower, making it a key part of their training arsenal.
Many of us have been in a relationship where at the beginning it's fun, it's exciting, everything's good. Then things turn bad and we feel we have to push through and end up doing more harm than we are good. People know it's not going to last and then turns really bad because they have not walked away. The same goes for your training. Knowing when to walk away from a session is absolutely important. I'm not saying everyone should quit just because you're feeling lazy on the day. I'm saying it's important to know when a session is doing more harm than good. If you're feeling exhausted or feel that you haven't recovered properly before starting an interval session, for example, you'd be better off by doing a light recovery session or even some cross training, rather than slogging it out and risking getting injured.
Runners are a hardy bunch and often run through pain, but it is critical to know the difference between pain of exertion, general aches, and the pain of injury. As we get older, we become stiffer and often succumb to general aches and pains. This is okay and indeed normal, but it is recognizing this versus the pain that is sharp and could be the start of an injury. So how do we tell these apart? And sometimes it can be quite tricky. Start by moving through a good warm-up. And if things start to loosen off and feel okay, then that is a green light to carry on. But if after the warm-up the ache worsens, then back off and take a few rest days. Low-level aches, niggles and pains generally are okay and often part of running. And indeed you can keep running to a certain extent, just reduce your run load and limit or avoid intensity. However, if whilst running you get a sharp pain, immediately stop. This is a red light, and if a few days rest doesn't help, it is worth visiting a physio or a physical therapist to find a way forward. If a pain keeps you awake at night, this is another red light, or if indeed a pain is changing your running gait, another red light. And this is a good time to go and get some professional help to be able to rehab the injury. It is good practice to monitor your pains and injuries and aches, and using a scale from 0 to 10 is a good way to do it. A mild injury or ache would be from 0 to 3 out of 10, a moderate 3 to 5, severe 5 to 7, and very severe 7 to 10. Any pain from moderate and above should be addressed, whether it's a couple of days rest, a couple of weeks rest, or going to see some professional for some help to rehab that ache or pain. Strength training is a great tool for prevention of injuries. To download our free strength training plan, click on the link on the screen now.
Recovery is such a key aspect to making sure that you improve, and if you do not recover, you will not improve. My father was an elite marathoner when I was growing up, and in his 50s he really started to battle. He was pushing harder, but finding that he was injured all the time. A new experience for him because he had never been injured or suffered a major injury in over 30 years of running. On a run with my dad one day when he was complaining about his knee being sore, but not long before that he'd been complaining about his hamstring, I was like, "Dad, honestly, you spent so much money on my degree, but you're not interested in listening to anything that I've got to say. So quite frankly, I'm not so interested in listening to you complain." And that somehow got through to him, and we started having a discussion around why I think my dad is getting injured all the time. And the one change that I convinced him to make straight away was to reduce the number of days a week that he was running. Up until that point in his life, he was running 7 days a week, and I somehow managed to convince him to cut down to 5 days a week, although I was trying to get him to 4. And the improvements that he made in enjoying his running and being injury and pain-free, that then led to improvements in his running that meant that he was running times at 60 that he last ran when he was 50 years old. led me to create this running fast over 50 masterclass. The key message here is that if you do not create time in your plan to recover properly or listen to your body and know when to cut back and when to take rest days, your running will not improve and you will risk getting injured.
When working in a scientific research field, you learn to figuratively work in pencil, meaning that your ideas aren't fixed and you expect that you're going to get new data outcomes that are going to change where your plan goes for your research project. So as soon as a new piece of information comes in, you've got to be ready to absorb that information in and then adjust your plan accordingly, meaning that you're taking input from outside and not sticking to a rigid plan pursuing a certain outcome. So in that sense, think of your training plan as being, as I said, figuratively in pencil. So you've got sessions scheduled, but you're going to use information that comes at you from your own sessions and then from data from your watch. Your watch gives you very useful metrics. You also must learn how to feel your own body, feel how you are responding to things, and correlate this with what data you get from your watch to be able to make an informed decision. If you're not feeling particularly good on a day, you have to be flexible enough to allow yourself to adjust the program and say, today, if I had an interval session planned and I'm feeling very, very flat, pursuing that session might not be the best outcome for me at this point in my plan, so I can shift it to a different day and just do an easy run. On a different day, you might have said, I'm going to hold back a little bit, but you feel absolutely good. And then you can maybe work a little bit harder and do a moderate intensity session or do an interval session. So the idea here is that you're going to use inputs that you get from devices and your own internal measurements to be able to make adjustments to your plan and not stick rigidly to what you're doing, and then risk things like injury and illness and overtraining by pursuing hard training when you're not ready for it.
So the next thing that smart runners plan to quit is racing every single weekend. We're very lucky here in South Africa that we live in a place where road running and trail running is part of our culture essentially, and there are races every single weekend, particularly in the major centers. You can literally run a marathon every single weekend if you wanted to. And what we found here at Coach Parry is that the athletes that race every single weekend generally don't run to the best of their ability. And the same applies for park runs. We're not saying don't go and run races, but you don't have to race every single race that you run. You can use it as a training run, but if you're one of those athletes that really feels that as soon as the gun goes and white line fever starts and you can't let the guy or girl in front of you beat you, then it's probably better to stay at home for your training runs and choose a few races once a year that you can really go all out and see how hard you can smash.
Imagine missing breakfast in the morning. So to make up for that meal, you decide to have breakfast and lunch at lunchtime. It's going to make you feel sick, right? I mean, you know missing one meal won't kill you. However, if it keeps happening, it's important to figure out why you keep missing breakfast and then maybe look at rescheduling things or changing your day to allow you to get that meal in. The same applies to your training. Missing 1 or 2 training sessions is not going to have a negative effect on your training. Trying to catch them up, however, has a knock-on effect on the rest of your training and affects the quality of your recovery. If you have lost a week of training or potentially more as a result of maybe getting ill or being on vacation, it is then important to maybe look at restructuring your program slightly to try and make up for some of the lost work. Not trying to cram it all in though, because again, there will be a knock-on effect to what is to come with the rest of your training program.
The smartest runners are really good at quitting a bad diet and too much alcohol. If you have a poor diet or poor nutrition, essentially that is going to be affecting your running performance. We've done tons of videos around why nutrition is so important for your running, but essentially you need to be fueling your body, giving your body the fuel that it needs for the activity that it is doing. The same thing with regards to alcohol. Alcohol impairs your muscle recovery. It also impairs your sleep. The two are tied together. And as a result, that is going to impair your performance. And so the smartest runners are really, really good at quitting a bad diet and too much alcohol, especially in times when we are training very, very hard. I'm not saying that we must live these lives where we don't enjoy a drink or two, but try and periodize that into your training and when you're training specifically and have a block of hard training for a goal race.
It's important to remember that your training plan is in pencil, not a fixed thing in pen or carved into stone. Your training plan is a guide and should be treated as such, based on how your body is feeling. The problem is that if you're not doing the right kind of training for the type of runner that you are, you're never going to reach your full potential as a runner. So watch this video where we'll show you the 3 different types of runners and you can figure out where you fit in. And we'll show you what kind of training you should actually be doing.